At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to do a deep dive into something pretty big. The recent NATO summit that just finished up in London. If you're listening to this, you probably want to know what went down.
Absolutely.
Why everybody's talking about it, what it all means for the future, what we've got you covered.
You bet.
We've been looking over all kinds of stuff. News articles,
of course,
official statements. We even dug up some historical context.
Oh, wow.
Just to give you the full picture.
Very cool.
So this wasn't just some routine NATO meeting. This summit was about some really big changes in global power.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And it all happened while the war in Ukraine is still raging.
Right.
Speaking of Ukraine, do you remember that meeting between Trump and Zelensky?
Oh, yeah.
That happened at the White House?
At the White House?
Right before the summit?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that really set the stage for some drama. From what I read, it sounded like they had a real clash about how committed the U.S. really is to Ukraine. And that got a lot of European leaders nervous.
Definitely. That meeting really showed how uncertain Europe is feeling right now about the U.S.'s role in keeping them safe. I mean, European countries, they've been depending on the U.S. for security for, like, forever. But now they're starting to wonder, hold on, is the U.S. really going to be there for us when we need them?
Yeah, like Europe is thinking,
right,
okay, maybe we need to start taking care of ourselves a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that actually leads perfectly into one of the biggest themes that came out of this summit. European countries.
Yes.
Stepping up their defense game in a big way.
Huge.
When I saw the numbers, I was shocked. We're not talking about some small increases here.
No.
We're talking serious money.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Since 2014, European allies, and Canada too, they've all increased their defense spending together by over, get this, $700 billion.
Wow.
And just in 2024 alone, they spent $485 billion. That's a 20% jump from the year before.
I am blown away by those figures. It really sounds like Europe is sending a clear message, like they're not messing around.
Yep.
But I'm curious, what are they actually doing with all that cash? Is it all just going into bigger armies?
Well, it's not just about size. It's about modernizing their forces, making them more strategic. And you know what? A lot of European countries are investing a ton of money in cyber defense because they realize cyber warfare is a growing threat.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. They're also developing some really advanced weapon systems.
Like what?
Drones, precision-guided munitions, that kind of thing. And of course, a big chunk of that money is going to support Ukraine.
Okay, so it's a multifaceted approach.
Definitely.
And speaking of Ukraine, the summit came up with a 4-point plan to try and deal with the war that's still going on. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. The first point is all about continuing the military aid to Ukraine and maybe even increasing it. This means giving them a bigger range of weapons, maybe even longer range missiles, so they can hit targets further inside Russia.
I bet that's going to make some people in Moscow pretty upset.
It could, yeah. And that leads us to the second point, which is about getting tougher on the economic sanctions against Russia. The goal is to really target those key parts of their economy and put the squeeze on them so they'll come to the negotiating table.
So they're trying to squeeze Russia from both sides,
Right.
Militarily and economically.
Exactly. Now, the third point is all about making sure that any peace talks in the future have to respect Ukraine's borders and independence. No compromising on that.
That sounds pretty non-negotiable.
It is. And finally, the fourth point is maybe the most important and definitely the most controversial. They're talking about creating something called a coalition of the willing.
Okay, I gotta admit, I'm a little confused about that. What does that even mean? Is it like a new mini NATO? Who's in it? And what are they supposed to do?
It's not really a new organization. Think of it more like a group of countries that are willing to do more than just send aid. They're ready to get more involved in defending Ukraine. This could mean sending troops to Ukraine or giving them direct military help if Russia makes things worse.
Wow. So is this Europe basically saying, we're ready to put boots on the ground even if other countries aren't? That's a pretty bold move, especially when you think about how risky it is to have a direct confrontation with Russia.
Yeah, it is a bold move.
Okay.
And it definitely comes with some big risks. But it also shows how serious Europe is about this. They see what's happening in Ukraine not just as some far-off conflict, but as a direct threat to their own security and to the whole idea of a world based on rules.
Right, right. Because if a powerful country like Russia can just decide to invade its neighbor and there are no consequences for that, what's stopping them from doing it again? It sets a really dangerous precedent.
Absolutely.
But if we're talking about like a real confrontation with Russia, where does this coalition of the willing fit in with NATO?
That's a great question. And it really gets to the heart of how things are changing between Europe and the United States. That tension we talked about between Trump and Zelensky.
Yeah.
That wasn't just a one-time thing. Europe is starting to feel like they can't always count on the U.S. to have their back. So they're looking for other options, just in case.
So this coalition is like Europe's way of saying, we're going to take care of our own security, even if the U.S. isn't totally with us.
Exactly. It's a way for them to show they have power and influence on their own without needing the U.S. to make every decision for them. And this has been building for a while now. European countries have been slowly increasing their defense spending and working together more closely over the past decade. But this summit feels like a real turning point.
It's like they're saying, we can't just sit around waiting for the U.S. to act. We have to do something ourselves.
Yeah.
But what about the specifics of this coalition? Do we know which countries are actually in it?
They're still working out the details, but the main members will probably be the UK, France, Germany, Poland, and those Baltic states. Others might join depending on what the mission is and whether they're willing to send troops or resources.
So it's not just a symbolic thing. They're actually talking about sending soldiers to Ukraine.
Yep.
That's huge.
It is.
What do you think Russia's reaction is going to be to all this?
It's tough to say for sure, but I don't think they'll be thrilled about it. They've already been complaining that NATO is expanding eastward and threatening them, and this coalition will just make them feel even more like that.
Sounds like this could really make things worse and increase the chances of the war spreading.
It could.
But didn't they also talk about a ceasefire plan at the summit?
They did. There's a proposal for a truce, a one-month truce. It would mainly focus on the areas where the fighting is the worst, in eastern Ukraine. The idea is to give them a chance to have some peace talks, maybe start to trust each other a little more.
I mean, it makes sense, but I just don't see how a one-month break is going to be enough to fix a conflict this deep.
It's a long shot.
And even if they do manage to agree on something, how can Ukraine be sure that Russia won't just break the agreement later on?
That's the big question. And it shows that they need more than just a temporary ceasefire. What Ukraine really needs are some solid guarantees about their security in the long term, something that will keep them safe and prevent Russia from invading again.
So what kind of security guarantees are we talking about here? Would Ukraine joining NATO be part of that?
NATO membership is a complicated issue. They definitely talked about it at the summit. But some European countries are really hesitant about extending that Article 5 protection to Ukraine. The part where an attack on one NATO member is considered an attack on all of them. They're worried that it would lead to a direct war with Russia, which no one wants.
Yeah, I get that. But if not NATO membership, then what? How else can they realistically protect Ukraine from another Russian attack?
There are a few options they're thinking about. One idea is to give Ukraine a really strong security pact, something less than full NATO membership, but still with solid promises from the big powers to defend them if they're attacked again.
Like a mini NATO just for Ukraine?
Kind of like that. Another idea is to help Ukraine build up their own military so they can defend themselves against any future aggression from Russia. This means giving them advanced weapons, training, and intelligence.
Basically making them too tough for Russia to mess with without getting hurt.
Exactly. And then there's the economic side of things. The summit made it clear they're going to keep up the pressure on Russia with those sanctions and maybe even make them stronger. The message is those sanctions will stay in place until this conflict is resolved. They also talked about maybe using the Russian assets that have been seized to help pay for rebuilding Ukraine.
Ooh, that's got to sting. I can't imagine Russia's going to be happy about that.
Probably not.
It seems like they're trying to hit Russia from every angle. Military, economic, diplomatic. But is there a chance this could all backfire? Could putting this much pressure on Russia make them even more dangerous?
There's definitely a risk. We're talking about a country with nuclear weapons that's feeling increasingly threatened and isolated. If you push them too hard, who knows what they might do?
So how do you find that balance between standing up to their aggression and not making things worse? It feels like walking a tightrope.
It is a delicate balance. And there are no easy answers. But one thing is for sure. This is not just about Ukraine anymore. This is about the future of Europe, the future of the relationship between Europe and the U.S., and the future of the whole global order.
You're right. The summit wasn't just about negotiating some details. It was about some really fundamental changes in who has power on the world stage.
Absolutely.
And speaking of power dynamics, how do you think other big players like the U.S. are looking at this new, more assertive Europe?
It's mixed. Some people in the U.S. see it as a good thing. They think a stronger, more independent Europe is actually in America's best interest. It frees up the U.S. to focus on other things like China, and it means Europe is sharing more of the responsibility for global security.
Less reliance on the U.S., more shared responsibility.
Exactly. But others are more worried. They're concerned that this could lead to a world that's more divided, where the U.S. and Europe drift apart and can't work together as effectively to solve global problems. There's also a concern that a more assertive Europe might start acting on its own, without consulting the U.S., which could create friction and make diplomacy more difficult.
So it's a double-edged sword. More autonomy for Europe could be good for the U.S., but it also comes with some risks.
Definitely.
What about Russia? How do you think they see this shift?
For Russia, it's complicated. On the one hand, a more united and assertive Europe looks like a threat to them. It shows that their efforts to weaken NATO and divide the West haven't worked.
That must be pretty frustrating for them, considering what they've been trying to do.
For sure. But some analysts believe that Russia might actually see some opportunities in a more independent Europe.
Really? I don't quite see it. Why would they want that?
Because a more independent Europe might be more willing to deal with Russia on Russia's terms, without being held back by the transatlantic alliance. It could give Russia a chance to play European countries off against each other, taking advantage of any differences they have in their interests or goals.
So a more fragmented Europe could actually work out in Russia's favor in the long run.
It's possible. It all depends on how Russia decides to play its cards. And that's what makes this whole situation so fascinating and so unpredictable. We're at a real turning point in history, and the decisions that the key players make in the next few months and years will have a huge impact on the global order.
It's like we're entering a whole new era, and the rules are being rewritten as we speak. And this coalition of the willing idea brings up a lot of questions about the future of NATO. If European countries are more willing to act on their own now, especially when it comes to military stuff, does that mean NATO is becoming less important?
A lot of people are wondering that, and it's a tough question. Some people say it's a sign that NATO is getting weaker, that the whole transatlantic partnership is breaking down because they don't agree on everything anymore. They point to the fact that this coalition of the willing is doing its own thing outside of NATO's official structure. And they think that could make NATO less united and less effective.
Yeah, it's like creating a whole separate system, which could get confusing, especially if they're not always on the same page.
Right. But then there's another way to look at it. Some people see this as NATO adapting, not falling apart. They say NATO was created for a different world back when the main threat was the Soviet Union invading Western Europe. But the world's a lot different now. The threats are more complicated.
So NATO has to change, too, to keep up with the times.
Exactly. It's like if you tried to use an old tool for a new job. It just wouldn't work. The people who see this as adaptation say a more flexible NATO, one that lets these smaller groups of countries tackle specific problems, could actually make the alliance stronger. It could make them react faster and be more effective.
I see what you mean. It's like having different tools in a toolbox, right? You wouldn't use a hammer to fix a leaky faucet. But it still leaves us with the question, what's going to happen to NATO in the future? Will it break up into smaller groups, each with their own agenda? Or can it stay together and have a clear purpose in a world where power is more spread out?
That's the big question, and honestly, no one really knows the answer. It depends on a lot of things. How committed the member countries are, what happens with global security, and whether NATO can change and reform itself to keep up.
So we're at a really important point in history, and the choices made in the next few years are going to have a huge impact. It's like we're at a crossroads, and one path leads to more division and chaos, while the other leads to a world where countries work together better to keep everyone safe.
Yeah, the stakes are high. And that's why this NATO summit was so important. It wasn't just about Ukraine or Russia. It was about the future of the West, the future of global order, the future of peace and security for everyone in the 21st century.
It's been awesome talking about all this with you, and I feel like we've just barely scratched the surface of this whole situation. It's so complex, and things are changing all the time.
Yeah, there's always more to learn. And things are moving fast. It's important to stay informed, to keep talking about these issues, and to think about all the different points of view and what could happen.
Well said. And to everyone listening, I hope this deep dive helped you understand the 2025 NATO Summit a little better and what it means for all of us. This summit was more than just a meeting. It was a sign of the times we're living in, a reflection of how power is shifting around the world, and the problems we're all facing in a world full of uncertainty and conflict. So thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.
Today is your lucky day. Today is the day that our $3 website works for you, paying you directly to your PayPal daily. Imagine $3 ongoing continuous payments to your PayPal account. Imagine falling asleep and waking up to $300 in your PayPal account. How would this make you feel? How could this help you? What bills could you pay? What kind of fun could you have? What does that retirement look like now? All for a one-time payment of $3. This website is DFY done for you, fully built and completely hosted, and never stops collecting payments for you. You have spent $3 on coffee on a regular, but that coffee won't help you create multiple streams of income. Click the link below.